5-ton boulder on your property, you can't do anything about it. If they want to rain toxic dust down on your property and your children, you can't do anything about it. If you did that in New York State, we'd sue you. We'd take your money. We'd make you clean up every bit of silicone dust from our property. But you can't do that here in West Virginia. If you poison somebody's wells, if you take the water out, they hate property rights. And if you are an individual and you want to participate in decisions about the destiny of your community, like every other American has that right to participate in zoning laws and have zoning commissions and planning boards and make a decision about whether you in your community want to have mountaintop removal mining and want to have explosions 3 times a day. Every other community in this country, you can say, no, we don't want that in our community. We don't want it in our town. We don't want it in our county. Only in West Virginia has democracy, local democracy, been stolen so thoroughly from local people that they don't have property rights anymore in West Virginia. They don't have zoning rights in West Virginia. They don't have the right to participate in local democracy. Transparency in government, which is the hallmark of our democracy, has disappeared in West Virginia. What they're doing is illegal, so they have to do it in secret. The agencies that are supposed to protect Americans and West Virginians from pollution have been captured by the industry they're supposed to regulate so thoroughly that they become, West Virginia DEP essentially is a sock puppet for the coal industry. And if you see this film that we did, that Bill Haney did, I didn't actually have anything to do with it, but I saw it, I didn't see it till it was done. But you'll see a scene in that film where local protesters, local people from West Virginia, from Marsh Ford, who wanted to exercise their constitutional right to petition the government. They want to go to DEP and say, we want you to do our job. Well, they couldn't get next to the DEP building. They were relegated to a tiny and remote corner of a very, very big parking lot. They were surrounded there by police barricades and police officers, the armed presence of the state of West Virginia, preventing these citizens from exercising their rights to petition. And there was another concentric ring of 2,000 miners who were given in cahoots with the DEP, formed the inner circle to protect the DEP from these voices, from these local voices. They were given the day off, paid day off by Massey Coal, and then the whole parking lot was surrounded without any police interference with truck drivers, coal trucks who were honking their horns to drown out the voices of citizens who have wanted a right to petition their government and their agency. So democracy has been totally subverted in the state, and then the judiciary in the state of West Virginia, even this right-wing Supreme Court that we have today with Alito and Scalia and Roberts and Clarence Thomas, the most pro-corporate Supreme Court that we've had since the Gilded Age. Even that Supreme Court had to rebuke the West Virginia Supreme Court last year for its cozy sweetheart relationship with the coal industry. And they've had to corrupt virtually every relevant politician in the state of West Virginia. By every poll, 2/3 of the people in the state of West Virginia oppose mountaintop removal mining and want to see it shut down immediately. But there's not a single elected politician in the state who will say that publicly. Well, that's not democracy, ladies and gentlemen. That is something else. And I'll tell you what it is. And this is something Americans ought to understand. The domination of business by government is called communism. The domination of government by business is called fascism. Throughout American history, you have the Tea Party out there saying, well, the big government is a big threat to American democracy, and I agree with that. Big government is a huge threat to our democracy, and when the government is allowed to torture people, to eavesdrop on our citizens, to suspend a habeas corpus, to operate black prisons, to do extraordinary renditions, and do all of these kind of things to interfere, which conservatives used to be against. That kind of power by government to interfere with your personal rights, the bulldozing of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which the conservatives from Fox News and talk radio say, Well, the Bill of Rights is a luxury that we can no longer afford in this country. And that's what the Tea Party stands for, so I agree with them. Big government is a threat. But the biggest threat to American democracy is the ascendancy of unsheathed corporate power. From the beginning of our national history, our most visionary political leaders have been warning Americans against the domination of corporate power. Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, said that America would never be destroyed by a foreign enemy, by a Taliban or by, an Iran. But he warned that our beloved democratic institutions would be subverted by malefactors of great wealth who would steal them from within. Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, in his most famous speech ever, warned Americans against the domination by the military-industrial complex, by corporate power. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest Republican in American history, said in 1863, during the height of the Civil War, I have the South in front of me, and I have the bankers behind me. And for my nation, I fear the bankers more. And Franklin Roosevelt, during World War II, said that the domination of government by corporate power is, quote, the essence of fascism. And Benito Mussolini, who had an insider's view of that process, said the same thing. He complained that fascism should not be called fascism, it should be called corporatism, because it was the merger of state and corporate power. Well, that's what we have here in West Virginia, the merger of state and corporate power. And one of the reasons that it's so critical that we fight here in West Virginia the way these miners fought in 1921 and established a battleground here, and this mountain is the beginning of the union movement in this country, which created the middle class, which took our country back from the corporate powers who came to dominate America during the 1880s and 1890s, during the Gilded Age, when the big trust, the steel trust, and the coal trust, and the sugar trust owned America and subverted democracy. And you had a few brave journalists like Ida Tarbell and Upton Sinclair who stood up to them, and Teddy Roosevelt, who passed these wonderful laws, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the graduated income tax, which finally made corporations and wealthy citizens pay their share of American democracy, for paying for American democracy. The union laws that allowed unions to organize and create the middle class, that gave us stability to our democracy and prosperity, that made us the envy of the world. And it all started here on Blair Mountain. This is the Gettysburg of the union movement in our country. And these companies want to dismantle it, and we have to draw the line here. Our country today is under attack, and our democracy is under attack. And it's under attack by a United States Supreme Court that passed, that made the worst decision in United States history. And I was telling these great journalists who've come all the way to cover this, but H.L. Mencken said that a journalist is someone who can't distinguish between a bicycle accident and the end of civilization. Well, the Citizens United case is the end of civilization, the end of American democracy. And we know a lot about Charlie Sheen, and we know a lot about Britney Spears, but very few Americans know that the Citizens United case is about to overwhelm our democracy and what's happening on Capitol Hill. The battle that started here ended with a law that was passed in 1907 by Teddy Roosevelt that made it illegal for corporations to donate directly to federal political candidates. And that law provided the foundation of our democracy for the next 100 years. And last year, the United States Supreme Court threw it out, and they've unleashed a tsunami of corporate dollars into the American political process. And the same thing is happening nationally as is happening in West Virginia. What happens when corporations dominate our government? You see that human beings are turned into commodities, communities are turned into commodities, and the environment, the landscapes are turned into commodities. And that's what's going to happen across America unless we turn back this ascendancy of corporate power, and this battle is the beginning of that. Thank you all very much.